I would like to welcome everybody here tonight, and what an amazing turnout for a very short notice. So thank you everybody for braving this starting to be a snowy evening. It's a real pleasure. So my name is Deb Crandall, and I'm the chair of Democracy Caledon. I'd like to introduce the other directors, Linda Pym, Rob Mezzapelli, and Dan O'Reilly, wherever Dan is. Right there. Dan O'Reilly. Since our last public meeting, Democracy Caledon has been busy behind the scenes. We've incorporated as a not-for-profit organization. We've been working on campaign and outreach strategies, and we explored the merits of challenging this decision by the mayor and council. This exploration led us to the town being served last Friday, as we are taking them to court against the decision that they made. We are as committed tonight as we were back in April, and we are pleased to share with you tonight more information about what we've been doing, what's been going on, and more importantly, what's happening next. But before we do that, I think it's important, so I'm sorry that I'm so oriented this way. There, how's that? Yeah. It's important that we situate ourselves. For those of us who have been here for a long time, this is our home. For those of us who are new to Caledon, and to those of us who haven't even come yet, this is our home. This is the home territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who descended from the Mississaugas of the Credit River. And in 1818, they entered into a treaty agreement with the Crown. That treaty agreement stands today. And in 2022, the town and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, they signed a memorandum of understanding. And this was to explore opportunities for a sustainable and healthy environment for everyone. It is our duty to hold our leaders accountable to this memorandum and to honor and acknowledge the teachings that are available to us in how to govern ourselves and how to learn to honor the land and water. My ancestors, our ancestors, came to Turtle Island from Ireland, from England, Wales, and Germany over several centuries, starting in the 1600s to the 1890s. These ancestors took advantage of broken treaty promises, and they in turn benefited from them. I continue to benefit from these broken treaty promises. I acknowledge this and open myself to learn and to listen. So I'd like to now introduce Mike Balkwell, who will be our MC for this evening. Mike is the campaign and engagement coordinator with Small Change Fund, with whom we've partnered for this campaign. Mike and his team, Sharon, Masita, and many others behind the scenes have been amazing partners, and we owe them a great deal. So Mike, take her away.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb. I think we're going to get a slide with an agenda. Linda is our fearless slide advancer. You can get a degree in slide advancing, and Linda has an advanced degree in slide advancing. It's considered a double advanced degree in slide advancing. It's a specialty. And we're going to go through the agenda. One of the reasons we're going through the agenda is I always like to be sure we're at the same meeting. All right? So in a moment, Rob is going to come up. Are you first, Rob? Yep, Rob's first. And so Rob and Deb are going to give a background and a recap of what's happened in the last 2 months since we've all been here together. How many were here at the last meeting back in Lots of people? Great. You see how all those hands were up? They're exactly like our logo. Have you seen our logo on the materials? All your hands being up, those your hands. Your hands are that logo. So we're going to do a background and recap, and we're going to share with you some polling results. Deb said we were busy. You were busy. They were busy over the summer. We did some polling, so we've got some results to share. And then we'll have an opportunity for some questions and answers. I'm looking around the room. There's a microphone there, right in front of Linda, that will turn around so that people can ask. You can line up and ask questions. And then David Donnelly, sitting over here, is a lawyer, renowned, famous, nationally treasured environmental lawyer, is going to describe the legal strategy to you. And again, we're going to take questions and answers. And then you've got, you picked up some materials on the way in with calls to action. We're going to go through all the calls to action. And the last on the calls to action is fundraising. We're going to do some fundraising. Somebody asked me if it cost extra to have a front row seat tonight. I said it costs nothing to get in, but it's going to cost something to get out. So we'll do a little fundraising. Is there a counselor here? Is anybody from council here? No. Okay. We just wanted to be clear that if somebody was here from council, we're not going to be giving them the platform tonight because we're in litigation with the town, and this is our meeting, having our conversation, and they'll have their meetings, and we'll go speak at their meetings, but this is our meeting tonight. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah. Last, we want to give you a chance to ask questions. We want to give you time for that. We are Democracy Caledon, and there's a lot of us, so we want you to respect the time that we have. Help us move along. Keep your questions short. You may have some comments to make too. And will that be okay if we move along at a brisk pace? We've got some ground to cover.
So we want to go back to the start with the 2022 campaign. And so this is Councillor Groves, or mayoral candidate at the time, Groves' campaign. And on the left you see some of her platforms of her campaign. So I just wanted to remind us of this as we start looking at what's happened since this term of office. So farms in Caledon need to strike a healthy balance between food security and the environment, protect valuable farmland, ensure we can grow our own food here and not require others to grow it for us. Governing, I want to make a point here. She's speaking about MZOs, which this is not. But I want you to look at the language she uses in her opposition, and you will see many of those being very applicable in what we're going to talk about tonight. She speaks about them having no respect for our citizens. They are undemocratic, circumvent public engagement, lack accountability and transparency. I want you to remember these. Lastly, respect for taxpayers. They need to trust that their representatives will treat their hard-earned money with respect and efficiency. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about some of the promises made here with the video clips. Maybe the next slide, Lynn. There it is.
As your mayor, I will ensure that growth pays per growth and that the infrastructure is in place before development happens. And I will also ensure that developers do not plan our community, but the people plan our whole community and our future.
So there I want you to, I don't know if you heard it very well, we were trying to get the mic to catch it. She clearly said she wants Caledon to plan Caledon, not developers to plan Caledon. I want you to keep that in mind. Next slide, please. This is about farms.
Over the past couple of years, we've all experienced challenges with food security. As your mayor,
I will work with the PL Federation of Agriculture to invest in our agricultural community to ensure farming remains viable within our town of Caledon.
Okay, next slide. So we just repeated it here in case the audio didn't work. So again, key one is growth and development. That growth will pay for itself, infrastructure will be in place in advance of growth. And the key one here is that Caledon will develop Caledon. It will not be developer-led. interestingly enough, although there was that video clip, if you looked at her platform, her campaign platform, growth and development was absent, entirely absent from her campaign as a campaign platform. So that's what we were promised, and now we're going to talk quickly about what we got. Next slide, please. So it starts in 2023. Caledon signs on to the province of Ontario's housing strategy, and as a part of that, Doug Ford gives Caledon Mayor strong mayor's power, where she can act unilaterally as the head of council in ways that traditionally she would be one vote in 9 and have no more voting power or authority than any other councillor. Strong mayor powers changed that. So what does our housing pledge look like? And I want you to not just look at the numbers, I want you to think about what these numbers mean. Our housing pledge is 13,000 residential units by 2031. That's 8 years from now. And I did look up in the Canadian census for Caledon and Peel region. The average people per unit is 3.2. So I use 3 people per unit as a conservative number. That's 30 to 40,000 people. That's greater than the population of Caledon, or Bolton, sorry, being added to Caledon in 8 years. I want you to think of it in that regard. This is significant growth for Caledon. I'm pretty sure I'm accurate in saying this. This, if it happens, will be growth we have never seen in our history. Next slide, please. So, I really want you to focus as well here on timing. This happens in very quick succession. And it starts here, I know you probably can't read it. My laser pointer. March 25th of this year. The town receives a letter from Quinto Anabale. He is a planning lawyer, not with the town. And he issues this letter to Mayor Groves and staff. And in it, he says, pursuant to instructions received by Mayor Groves. So she reached out to him for this direction that she's receiving. We don't know how that came about. It is not public knowledge how that direction was sought out, but he clearly states instructions were received from Mayor Groves to provide direction. And he's suggesting that and what's included in here is 12 zoning bylaw amendments, one for each of those parcels of lands we're going to see later, and including them for residential growth and development. Suggesting that they come to the meeting, this comes to the meeting the next day, March 26th. So March 25th, now we're March 26th, he's suggesting to bring this forward. He's suggesting that she use strong mayor powers. So not go through the traditional process with council where they vote on it as per their bylaws. Using strong mayor powers to bring it, and it says here, it will require council to vote on it despite any procedural bylaw. And because it's strong mayor power, she will only need 1/3 of council support for it to pass. So it was instructed from the mayor to give direction. Note that she's advised to use strong mayor powers, and note again the very short timeline. So March 25th, council March 26th. He's suggesting that this come to a vote on April 30th. Next slide, please. So these are the rezoning parcels. There's 12 of them. They're listed as A1 to A12. They amount to 5,000 acres. Everything in the south of Caledon and what's called the Peel Plain is our prime agricultural land. And the furthest south you get is our best prime agricultural land. So you can see many of these parcels are within that area. There's some here on the north side of Bolton. 12 parcels, 5,000 acres. So remember, we've already made the pledge for 13,000 units, 30 to 40,000 people. This is 35,000 units. This is not part of our housing pledge. This is above and beyond. We will remove 5,000 acres of our best prime agricultural land, triples the 13,000 housing pledge, and 3 weeks' notice are given for the public to look at this these 12 zoning bylaws. Next slide, please. So Democracy Caledon quickly mobilizes, and we had our meeting back in April, which many of you attended. Over 150, I wish we had that. Over 150 people attended, and it was clear that the sentiment from those in attendance was the opposition to what was being proposed and the means by which it was being done, i.e. strong mayor powers. Next slide, please. So when the town initiated this, they get comments back from their colleagues in the Regent Appeal and the Provincial Minister of Housing. So the Regent Appeal issued 12 letters, one for each of the parcels, which is a bit unique, but I think they wanted to make the point that they were addressing each and every one of them. And some of the common threads in those comments were, this is premature. The parcels are not required to meet our housing pledge. The vast majority of the lands, I should say. Cost implications to fast-track servicing 5,000 acres. And it is out of sequence with regional service plans. The Minister of Housing said that half of the parcels, 6 of the 12, are within narrowed area of interest and or focused analysis areas. This is to do with the Highway 413. So they were commenting that it was, in some of the cases, in conflict with those areas, that it was inconsistent with the Caledon official plan, Peel official plan, and provincial planning policy. Next slide, please. So I should say, in that April meeting where it was going to come to council for a vote, and if you had not shown up and delegated and given a strong voice, showing concern, it probably would have passed that day. But because there was such a strong reaction, she took it off the agenda. And then she pledged we're going to have public information sessions. And so those were held in May and June, I believe. And in one of them, I believe it was our very own Deb, who asked her directly and pointedly, will this come back to council during the summer? Will you at least wait till the fall to give people time to read it? It's a massive undertaking. Give people time to go through it, and more importantly, when it's not summertime, that you're available to come if you want and attend and have your voice heard. The unequivocal answer from our mayor was yes, it will not come back until the fall. Next slide, we'll see how that promise kept. So 1 month later, it does come to council. And thankfully, many of us showed up, and repeatedly the delegates were saying, look, you promised. Let's take the opposition to what you're proposing aside for a moment. Let's deal with your promise. Just keep your promise. Defer this to the fall. And many people spoke to that effect. And so a motion came to council to defer until the fall. Simply honor your promise. Every councillor, and certainly the mayor, knew what she promised. And this is the result, and I want you to take note of the names of that vote, to simply defer. Councillor Sheen, Kiernan, and Early said, yes, honor your promise, defer to the fall. It lost because Mayor Groves, Councillors Russo, Rosa, Napoli, and Mascal said no. Councillor DeBoer had a conflict. So it failed. The next order of business is to vote on the bylaws. They only voted on 11 that day, and the vote absolutely totally flips. Mayor Groves, Councillors Russo, Rosa, Napoli, and Mascal vote for it, and against it, Councillor Sheen, Kiernan, and Early, and Councillor DeBoer declared a conflict. The 12th bylaw passes the next month. So now this is in effect. Next slide, please. So this section, so what we were told, what we got, and the conflict between the two leaves us with many questions. And you've heard the expression, frequently asked questions, where there's questions and answers. There's no answers to all these questions, so we've cheekily called this frequently unanswered questions. So we're going to quickly go through them.
Why hasn't the mayor governed as she promised? Why didn't mayoral candidate tell voters she would develop in this way? Why hasn't council protected agriculture and green spaces within their control? Next slide, please. Why use your strong mayor powers? Did you ask for our permission to use it? She did not. Why rush this at the expense of following traditional planning processes and virtually shutting us, the public, out? Remember, we are still going ahead with our housing pledge of 30 to 40,000 people. Why use an outside planning law firm and lawyers who have or are representing some of these developers who stand to benefit from these zoning bylaws to actually craft the bylaws? So remember the pledge to not let developers plan Caledon, but to have Caledon plan Caledon. How is this not a conflict of interest? Why did the mayor instruct this firm to do this work? Why was this not a direction of council in public open session to do so? Why were the regional provincial letters of concern not shared with council and the public at the April public meeting? Next slide, please. Why were over 15 senior management staff either terminated or resigned from the town of Caledon? What will happen to road congestion and road safety? What will it cost for all this servicing? How much debt will the town incur? What will happen with taxes? So there's three things that will happen. Taxes go up, services go down, or debt goes up, or a combination of those three. What's going to happen to those? Next slide, please. How will we preserve the character of this community? How is this helping Caledon plan Caledon? Why isn't the majority of council listening to the residents? And lastly, who are they listening to? Next slide. And I'm going to pass it over.
Stay right here, Rob. A lot of questions, a lot of information. We think we'll stop now and ask for some questions, and then we'll go to Erica.
Okay.
Okay, stay here. So you heard the rattle that was going on in the microphone? We fixed it, right? We fixed it because the other microphone was causing interference, so we don't have another microphone. So what we're going to do is ask you to belt out your question. We may restate your question so everybody can hear it, and then try and answer it. Is that all right? Is that going to work? Pardon me?
We take that off.
I can wander around with it. How do you feel about that? Does this feel like the Phil Donahue show? Am I dating myself? First of all, thank you, Rob. And the whole leadership team did a lot of work to put that together, so thank you. So are there questions? Right here. I'm going to walk towards you. I'm not going to give away the microphone.
Okay, who is Quinto Annabelle? What's his qualifications? Where's his connection? Just exactly how does he fit in? Why would he be called in? What background does he have? What's his backstory?
So, we've had a lot of, where's Ken? We've had a lot of experience with Quinto Annabelle. He seems to be popping up in many of these cases. We're fighting against him in King City. He is with a firm called Loopster Nixon. He is a very successful developer's lawyer, and that's all we know.
Belt it up, stand up,
Yeah.
belt it up.
Sorry. Also, he does represent developers in the 12, including A7, which is the Mayfield Golf Course, the Greenbelt one. So if you Google that story, you'll find out, because that was a question I asked the first night about how can the lawyer representing the town of Caledon represent the developers at the same time, because that is a blatant conflict of interest. And I raised that concern over and over again, and they just said, there's no.
Talk louder.
Other questions? Right here. Is the microphone working? Did it stop working? It stopped working.
I can bounce it out.
Belt it out.
Okay. One of the questions I've wondered is, there was a transition team put together to, when the region appeal was being decided upon, whether it was going to be divided or not. But I don't know whether or not we yet know what we as Caledon citizens are meant to cover? Like, are we meant to cover roads? Are we meant to cover sewage system, water, etc.? And that answer kind of matters when it comes to all of what we're talking about. Does anybody know the answer to that?
No, and I think that's a really good question, because it has been in closed session.
Yes.
From the beginning. So the first, there was going to be the dissolution appeal.
Yes.
And then, whatever happened, then John Livy, wrote and said, anyway, so then it became a transitional issue.
Yeah.
What? I don't know.
Fast getaway.
So, sorry, my niece.
You're being helpful, though, I thought.
Oh, really helpful. So it's been, all decisions have been behind closed doors. The only time that they came out into the public is when Mayor Groves brought it to a council meeting, or a planning meeting, to announce that if the region were to download road and waste management, that it would result in a 70% tax increase. And she was admonishing them, she was recommending that they not do that. That is all we have heard. The other councillors have asked for this information. I've been at council where they've asked the CAO for information. He has not provided that. So we as residents have no idea. We have no idea. And I just get really angry thinking about that. It's unconscionable, because this has massive impacts on our future, financial, all of our futures.
So there's no timeline that's been given?
We don't know. I don't know your name, but we don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Right up here. And then we'll come back there.
Thank you. This question is very irrelevant, I would imagine, at this point, considering the vote has happened with council. My understanding was that Councillor DeBoer only had conflict with one parcel, but I understand he didn't vote on any of them. I'm just curious, why was that?
So Nick is my counselor, our counselor. I've spoken with him a lot about this, and it was upon the advice of his lawyer that and it's more than just one. He is working with a number of these parcels because it's agriculture in transition. So he made that decision for himself and his family, and as constituents, we have to respect that.
There's a hand back here. Yep.
I don't need a microphone.
All right.
I just have a question that I've asked numerous times at council, and was brought up earlier about the calculation of the calculation of population relative to either 13,000 homes or 35,000. The factor of 3.2, you used 3. I basically challenged that in the respect, and I used Sunfield as an example, and Castles of Caledon, which is here in Caledon East. The size of the homes that are being built, there are so many multi-generational occupants in houses these days that I'm just saying that I think the anticipated population growth based on these development houses is going to be significantly more than 30 to 40,000 or 100,000 for 35,000 homes. We did that census back in 2021, was it? No. Is this factor a result of that census, or is it a factor that maybe 10 years ago or so?
So, very valid point. I was conservative. But what it looks like being conservative, with the 13,000 being 30 to 40,000, that's over the size of Bolton being added to Caledon in 8 years. The 35,000 is 100,000 people. We're only a community of, I think, 84,000 at this point. These are massive numbers, so if they are densities greater than 3 people per unit, then it's...
These numbers are so important in the respect that they are used to calculate what schools we need, what hospitals we need, what the amount of water that people are going to use, the amount of sewage. I just think with the underestimating, that's why we're always behind the 8 ball relative to all these infrastructure needs.
So fair point, and all I wanted to do was err on the side of caution. Those are still massive numbers that have all those concerns you just raised. So if they're even higher, if they turn out to be even higher people per unit, then it exacerbates it that much more.
And I guess I'm still waiting for an answer on, is this factor a result of the most recent census?
Don't know. It's a really good question. It's a really good question. I'm going to take, is it okay if we take one more question and then move on? Is that right? 2 more questions.
I'd like to add to this. I am a grandparent, and because of the high cost of living right now, I have the grandchildren living with us. So this 3.1 is totally not accurate at all.
You're here. Thank you.
Just a quick question, really. Have you put out a budget for yourselves to sue the town and follow up what you're doing here? I mean, have we got an idea of all this is going to cost? How much money do you think you would like to get in order to cover that?
Be patient. Be patient. All right. Erica McNeese is also on the leadership team. Welcome her to the stage. Welcome her to the front. Come on.
So I'm looking out in the crowd and I see a lot of faces that we've seen at both the Democracy Caledon meeting and people that lent their voice to the cause and wanted really to have their voice heard when it came to the 12 parcels. But that's anecdotal evidence. And really what Democracy Caledon has focused on in the last few months is getting as much data as we can and being able to be making it available to you. So sidebar, a little plug, if you take a look at our new website, there are lots of the documents that we just didn't have time to be able to make available through our slideshow, that we've done a lot of the work for you so that you don't have to go through hours and hours of the town website to find some of these documents. But further to the idea that, it's one thing to show up at a meeting and to be impressed by hundreds of people that are showing up. But what we wanted to know was, from a data perspective, where do people's worries lay? And do we really have people standing behind this cause? And so we chose to partner with the Small Change Fund and Palais Data. I'll take the next one, Linda. In order to do a little bit of polling. And so, in July of 2024, Palais Data, a market research firm based in Toronto, conducted a survey for us, sponsored by the Small Change Fund and on behalf of Democracy Caledon. The poll sample, which we will have questions after this, so you can ask some of the mathematical questions after this, but the poll sampled 302 adults. The calls went out both to landlines and to cell phones, and people were asked a variety of questions, and these are the questions that we asked. First, on March 26, 2024, Caledon Mayor Annette Groves announced that she was using her strong mayor powers to pre-zone 5,000 acres of farmland to build 35,000 homes. This pre-zoning approval exceeded the commitment by the town's housing pledge by 13,000 homes required by the Ontario government. The question we asked in the poll was, do you support Council's decision to pre-zone 5,000 acres of farmland for development? You'll see the results in a second. Our second question was, the town of Caledon has not completed a comprehensive forecast of the financial impact of servicing the lands or the impact on property taxes. The question we asked was, do you consider Caledon Council's decision to zone the lands without a comprehensive financial forecast to be a responsible decision? The third question, how concerned are you about the financial impact of this decision on your property taxes? Our fourth question, do you support an independent inquiry into the financial implications of the decisions by Caledon Council? Fifth, do you agree or disagree that the decision to rezone these lands primarily favors developers? And sixth, how important will this decision be in deciding who you vote for the next municipal election? And these were the results. So, as you can see, there was 60% of the population had strong opposition to the pre-zoning of Caledon farmland. So, of course, if you were at the meetings, that was one of the topics that came up, and the data supported that 60% of our population were in fact concerned about that. Concerns about the lack of financial forecast. I think probably on every level, someone is going to be concerned about that. But in terms of the data that we received, 76% of the population was concerned about the lack of financial forecast. And speaking to the gentleman in the back, exactly that. Even with all of the data that we have been going through, we still find it exceedingly difficult to find any information that any financial forecasting of any sort has been done. And there is no indication that we have even any realm of idea what the ultimate impact financially is going to be on us. Concerns on property taxes. 64% of the population was significantly concerned about the impact on our property taxes. Part of that because, in all fairness, and we will go through some of this and it can be found on the website, many people just are not really aware of how some of our public services are funded and where that money comes from and how much of it we are on the hook for. There was 59% of the population was strongly supportive of an independent inquiry into the financial implications of the decision. I think probably if we took a poll in the room, 99% of people would probably put their hands up at this point in the room. And 58% of our residents believe that the rezoning favors developers. I mean, you don't have to look far in this province to know that there is a tenant leaning towards developers. In this case, we are recognizing, in particular, we see the conflict with the lawyer. We know that there is some connection there to there being a benefit for the developers. And then finally, 80% of the population believe that this will, in fact, impact their 2026 vote. And this question was asked in particular because we wanted to be able to preemptory mobilize people in understanding that no matter how you voted in the last election, you still have the power to indicate who you would like on council in our upcoming elections. And so that was really more a question of empowerment more than anything else. I don't even know what my next slide is. Is it question and answers? Question and answers. So in terms of the polling questions, I'm going to defer to Mike because Mike was instrumental in working with Palais Data in providing us the information.
See? Very well done, Erica. Any comments in respect? Does this surprise you? No. Hands up if you think that's how your neighbors would feel about this. Yeah, okay. Are there any questions about this information?
See?
Okay.
It's boring.
Excellent job, Erica. You did an excellent job. Thank you.
The 302 respondents, is that a representative sample of Caledon or just the ones that answers the phone?
It is a representative sample of Caledon. And I can give the details of the methodology if you want, but maybe, did anybody here take the survey? Anybody get the survey call? Yeah, so they call you up, you click on the phone, you give an answer. If they call, they don't get an answer, they go to the next one in the dials. And 300 gives a competence level plus or minus 5%. A pretty standard process, and they're a reputable firm. We worked with them before. Other places.
Age 18 and above.
Age 18 and above.
And the sample size that we were suggested, and the sample size that we obtained was the sample size that was suggested to us by polling in order to get the most accurate feedback from this sample size taken. So that's how we did it.
Just one comment. You mentioned a certain percentage.
Stand up, stand there, face the audience.
Okay. Mentioned a certain percentage of people voting this were that, and you said 30% or 60% of the population, but in fact, it was.
That's right, the polling.
The polling, yeah, I think that's important. What you?
Yes, back there.
Will another poll be done?
Will another poll be done? Well, there's two answers to that. One is we can do more polling later if we need to, and if we have the funds to afford more polling, yes. So I don't think we need more polling now. As Erica mentioned, the leadership wanted to be sure that it wasn't just 150 people who got up on the wrong side of the bed one morning and were opposed to this, and the whole community, in fact, supported it. And in fact, they discovered with these results, the majority of the community feels the way you do. And so that was a significant factor in telling Democracy Caledon they wanted to move this direction. Rob?
Mike, I just want to make sure I'm accurate when I say this. In case anyone's concerned about the 300 and felt that that might have been a small sample, and I'll refer to Erica and Mike to confirm, what they told us is you could have 3,000. The percentage of your responses is going to be the same. So 300 gets you a cross-section of your community, how they feel, and then anything above that, you're just paying more money for them to do the work. The results will be the same. So if you're concerned about the 300 being a small number, we could have taken it bigger and would have got the same response back.
Well said. Thank you. At the very back.
Unrelated to the polling, I just have a question. Several months ago, I was at a meeting that was related to the quarry, and the mayor gave a land acknowledgement suggesting that we were on additional One Spoon territory. I approached the mayor at the end of the night and asked her if she had reached out to all of the nations and include them in all of these discussions, because the additional One Spoon territory represents not just the Mississaugas of the Credit, but it represents all of the nations together. All of the chiefs have a say in all of this development. And any time that the Mississaugas give a stamp, there should be all the chiefs that are part of that stamping process. So do you know if anyone has anyone else been engaged outside of the Mississauga of the Credit?
I'm going to defer that in a minute to David Donnelly when he gets up to speak. Yes?
Yes. When I was mayor, we remured a tree in the Mississaugas of Credit. We worked through the Mississaugas of Credit. We built the Haudenosaunee, all the groups. They are our lead. They're who we contact for everything, and we work through them on everything. That was what the renewal of the Wampum Belt was for. They are the treaty holders. They're the ones that work with all the other nations coming together.
Okay.
I'm just going to ask you two to have that conversation in the corner.
No, but I'm just trying to clarify.
And we've heard
It's
that.
important because you have to do every 200 years. And I'm trying to explain the position why we did what we did.
Thank you.
Especially for aggregate concerns. That was the main reason why we did it.
Thank you. Okay. Given the confidence of the community expressing their concerns about this, as Deb mentioned at the beginning, then start to explore a legal strategy, and you've seen in the newspaper that the town has been served. And so I'm going to invite David Donnelly to the stage. There are people who say that David Donnelly is Canada's foremost environmental lawyer, and I'm one of those people. And I work with David through the Small Change Fund in many communities on multiple campaigns. He's smart as heck, he's very creative, and he's a fierce advocate for grassroots campaign, and he's not afraid of anybody. So David's going to come up and explain the legal strategy and also describe to you and tell you about the other firm who's engaged with us on this. David Donnelly.
I apologize for my voice this morning. I had a gastropathy on a general anesthetic. When I woke up, the anesthesiologist said jokingly, "Do you have any big plans for tonight?" And I said, "Well, yes, I'm going to Caledon." She thought I was joking. She said, fine, but okay. No drinking, no driving, no marijuana, no physical activity, especially sex, and no making major decisions. And I replied, what else is there to do in Caledon? Anyway, I apologize for my voice. It gives me great pleasure to appear here again in Caledon. I've represented many groups here over the years, continue to represent the Fortunately Credit Preservation Group that have done amazing work with your official plan, to approve the official plan to deal with new quarry applications. So citizens groups can succeed in this town, especially when you're well organized like this and you have great organizers and great community people like Deb on the board and like Balkba. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to give, but in your package there is a legal opinion, so all the citations on a bunch of the detail is in there. And certainly in about 6 weeks' time, we filed the application, which is a short notice. In about 6 weeks' time, we'll file what's called the factum. That is the argument of fact and law. And so if you're really into this case and you want all the details and references, you'll get it in about 6 weeks. You can ask your leadership for it. So you're going to get your day in court, and you deserve it. That's the theme of my presentation tonight. If we could go to the next slide. Briefly, I'm wonderful, so we won't spend too much time with me. The great news is that I'm definitely in the second chair on this. You have hired the world's largest law firm, Denton's, to represent you, and specifically a man named Roberto Alberto. He is a real estate municipal land use planning lawyer in Ottawa. And the reason why we chose Roberto in part was because he didn't have conflicts in the GTA. Very hard to find smart municipal lawyers without conflicts in the GTA. I'm one of the few ones. He doesn't. He's on the case. Most importantly, he likes working for citizens groups like us. And so I've only pulled 2 cases from his biography. The first is the Caledon Corporation case. He defended the interim control bylaw that was successful in Oakville in protecting the Glen Abbey golf course, which was declared the first cultural heritage landscape in Ontario. That was an urban sprawl blight. The mayor and council were against it. There was a lot of heavy lifting in the legal world that went into it, and he was part of the heroes, the team that successfully defended that very important landscape. And second, he did a case in Kingston. Second, we were co-counsel in Kingston. Again, a group of heroes fought to keep a 16-story tower up Princess Street, which is the main street of Kingston. That decision was overturned. We went to court. It was taken to court. We defended it, and there was a protection of the main street of Kingston. No high rises on the main street. In fact, I always ask this question: who has the greatest inventory of significant cultural heritage buildings in Ontario? Everybody always says Niagara on the Lake. 127 buildings. In Kingston had over 700. So Roberto was the lead on that team succeeding. So citizens groups like you can and win if you have a great legal team, and you do have a great legal team, myself included. But anyway, world's largest law firm representing you, you're going to be well represented. Next slide. Okay, my brief conclusion, and I'm going to read, I apologize. It is my opinion that proposed zoning bylaw amendments, or is it BLAs, do not conform with the Town of Caledon official plan, the future Caledon official plan, and the Region Appeal official plan. Under Section 24 of the Planning Act, no bylaw shall be passed that does not conform to an official plan. Under Section 237 of the Municipal Act, a non-conforming bylaw is illegal and therefore may be quashed. The law is that simple. What I propose to do now is to walk you through a couple of the instances. There are a number, but a couple of the instances, and I'll let you be the judge if this is a good case or not. We go to the next slide, please. The background you all know, so I won't take any time with that, but I do have an analogy. This case is very much like what happened in the Duffins Rouge Agricultural Preserve in Durham Region. I've got a couple slides on that. So you are not alone. This is not the first time this has been fought, but the Duffins Rouge Agricultural Preserve was resolved politically. You are going to be the champions in court standing up for growth management planning, for secondary planning. And so that's why this case, I think, is precedent-setting and so important. But again, that's the background. If we go to the next slide, please, in legal analysis. Okay, so The law in Ontario is very, very clear, and that is that the proper interpretation of official plan is not left to planners, believe it or not, and is not to be left to councillors and mayors. It is the purview or the domain of lawyers and judges if, of course, the matter gets into court, which, of course, your case is going to be. And so if someone tells you that, oh, no, we interpret the official plan the way we see fit here in Caledon, that's not the way the law operates. The judge will have a set of fresh eyes on this case, and it will be up to the judge to decide. There is no deference or special institutional expertise in your mayor, council, or planning staff. That is a real advantage in this case. Second, official plans, through this case and others, are now being elevated in their status or their importance to the community. It's true that if you drive through the GTA, if you drive up the 401 or across the 427 or any highway, you are looking at the failure of official plans, particularly the official plan amendment process, where the community agrees on official plan, and then the council, the mayors, give away developments to developers on an ad hoc or piecemeal basis. Now, what Caledon very wisely did, and has very wisely done as a future Caledon official plan, is that it has set tough rules or stringent conditions for varying from the official plan or amending the official plan. And those rules are concrete, and because they're in the official plan, they are to be interpreted as laws that you might find in a statute like the criminal code. So if someone tells you that the official plan policies in Caledon are somewhat wiggly or they're flexible, they are not, and that is a point that we'll be making in court. Now, official plans are absolutely positively crucial, as we saw in Durham Region. They are crucial to establishing public trust and financial stability. This is an incredibly important point around official plans, makes this case so compelling. Official plans make development and infrastructure spending transparent, or so they should, and predictable through a rigorous public participation program. In other words, if you, the people who fund this mayor and this council, and ultimately the infrastructure that these developers will benefit from, if you want this infrastructure and you want this spending, then you should tell your mayor and council that that's what you want. But you did the opposite in future Caledon official planning. You told them that you didn't want this infrastructure planning, that you were happy with the urban growth boundary, and that if there was to ever be an exception to it, you wanted a rigorous public process that started with a growth management plan. In other words, the numbers do matter. Now, 3.2 might be the right number, but you all have anecdotal evidence that it could be higher. All those matters can be resolved through a growth management study, or at least experts can convene and tell you what's really going on. And then you have the opportunity to review that material and then respond to your mayor and council, and you get to tell them how they want to vote. And if they choose to vote you down or to ignore your wishes, then you can punish them at the ballot box. What is not permitted is for them to assume the role of the expert, or that they know better than you, or they know how you want your money to be spent better than you. That's not permitted, and this court case is going to ask the question, is that legal? And you've already heard from me that it is not, and Dettons wouldn't have filed this case, the world's largest law firm, unless they thought that too. No next slide. Okay, so there are lots of examples of what I'll call the rules in the official plan, or the sections or policies in the official plan that must be obeyed. I only select two. But these are mandatory policies. Do not pass go. You cannot give the developers a permission or a zoning bylaw to develop, whether you put a holding symbol on it or you promise to do something later. There's lots of case law in Ontario that suggests you cannot pass on to another day, another time, or another person the responsibility of an elected official. They're the ones that bear the responsibility, and they bear that responsibility at the time that they make the decision. They can't put it off to staff because staff are unaccountable and unelected. So, in the case of the Peel official plan, I apologize, I'm going to read, but this is very important. I want you to sit in as the judge and tell me whether you think this is a mandatory policy or this is a discretionary permissive policy. Both the FSCOP and the RPO are explicit. Section 5.5.6 of the regional appeal official plan requires mandatory studies to guarantee efficient infrastructure planning and development. And here's the policy. Direct local municipalities, in this case Caledon, in cooperation with the region, to prepare growth management and phasing strategies for designated greenfield areas. Doesn't say may, doesn't say at your discretion, it doesn't say some other date or as part of a holding symbol. It's clear that they must prepare these growth management phasing strategies before making concrete decisions like a zoning bylaw for greenfield areas. I think that's clear. We go to the next slide, please. Now, your future Caledon official plan is adopted but not yet approved. But there is case law in Ontario that says that you must, when making a decision, comply with a plan that is either approved or enacted. In other words, you don't get to say, well, that comes at some future date. We're not going to worry about that now. You must comply with the future Caledon official plan at the time you make the decision. And again, that's in my opinion, and that'll be in the factum. So, what does the future Caledon official plan say? In my opinion, it is equally clear, requiring extensive guidance regarding the need, for example, for growth management plans, just like the Peel official plan. It's very similar in that regard. It has another condition, and I quote, applications for development within the designated greenfield area should only be submitted where a secondary plan is in effect. Does it seem discretionary to you? Does it seem unclear? Is there a may in there? No, there is not. No secondary plans are in effect for the 12 ZBLA properties. Furthermore, Council did not receive the mandatory, and I'm quoting now, supporting studies and technical analysis prepared to the satisfaction of the town. In other words, you don't give somebody a zoning bylaw until they've been through a secondary plan. A secondary plan isn't particularly fancy. It's that you do the environmental impact statements, that you do the servicing report, that you do the master planning, you do the transportation planning, you do all the things that most councils do before making a monumental decision like imposing, let alone 12 new subdivisions that nobody had conceived of. If I told you 2 years ago, you'd have 35,000 new homes dropped on you in a piecemeal fashion, you would have laughed me out of the room. The good news is that your official plan says that there are a lot of preconditions before taking that vote, and those preconditions were not met, and in my opinion, that's illegal. We'll go to the next slide, please. Now, courts will occasionally side with municipalities or corporations where they think the outcome to disturb the status quo would be trivial. The beauty of having a firm like Detton's involved, and to see you all here tonight and the media coverage that you're getting and to do the polling, the brilliant work that your leaders are doing, is to build a record that this case matters. And this record will go before the court, and a judge will have to decide, is following an official plan with respect to growth management in a place like Caledon, does it matter? Well, we have a huge advantage in this score, at least for the present time. And that is, when these matters went to your council, you were very vocal about how disappointed you were, how disgusted you were that the process had been skipped over, and in your voices was the fact that what was happening felt illegal. How can you cut us, the citizens, out of the process? Now you have the answer, at least an opinion, that it was illegal. But there were two very important voices that are supporting us, hopefully all the way through to court. Now, the court will take notice, and our application does reference the position of both the Region Appeal and the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. These public agencies submitted comments to your council regarding the ZBLAs. They called them, and I'm quoting, I should have put quotation marks, called them premature, inconsistent with the provincial policy statement. And most alarmingly, to me anyway, was that the environmental protection areas mapping was, now I'm quoting, incorrect or entirely absent. How could your council do that? This could not be more explicit about what was to be done before those zoning bylaws were to be passed. Now, it's a great privilege to live in Caledon because it's so beautiful. It comes with drawbacks like anywhere. But you are very lucky because Forks of the Credit, I know well, the wonderful countryside that you have just at your doorstep. You have skiing in Caledon. There are many, many beautiful aspects to Caledon, but you are stewards of this environment. There are people in downtown Toronto or the suburbs or people who can't afford to live out here who like to come here to experience close to home nature. It would be a crying shame if we lost rural Caledon so that people would have to drive farther and farther and farther to experience, is what I'm looking around the room, what most of us know as true rural Ontario. All right? It's beautiful and it's extremely productive. It's a fabulous place to live, and that's why the Iroquois people settled here in great numbers, unlike the rest of Ontario. Why? Because it was such a magical, productive place to live. You are the stewards of this, and your official plan places the responsibility not on your mayor and council. They come and go. You, the residents, are responsible for the environmental protection areas mapping. You are responsible for the fact that it must be correct and present before zoning bylaws are made. And so while I congratulate you for summoning up the courage and raising the money to go to court, you are simply doing what you are obliged to do for future generations, the way past generations have done for you. In many cases, they did insist that planning was done correctly. There are so many beautiful features like the provincial park and like other places, Caledon, that were preserved by people who could have eaten up by a rich sprawl, but they didn't. So it falls to this generation to stand up to your mayor and council and to say, you are going to follow in the footsteps of your predecessors here in Caledon. If we could have the next slide, please. Okay. Now, I want to conclude very briefly with, I think, a powerful example or analogy that should let you know that you are on the right track. Now, how many of you recall on November the 4th, 2022, when our Premier, Douglas Ford, announced that he was going to take 7,400 acres and take it out of the Greenbelt? And you recall that because of people like you and me and Mike Balkwell and great people, we fought back and Doug Ford took back the state and gave us back our Greenbelt. Now, an almost identical situation played out in Durham Region. The politicians in Durham Region, especially Pickering with the Duffers Ridge Agricultural Preserve, had been lobbying for years to take 4,300 acres out of the Greenbelt for development. The developer's name is So Good Gaspris. And the city of Pickering was on side with this. They wanted the land taken out of the Greenbelt. Well, there was a huge hue and cry when it happened, and it wasn't the city of Pickering that said no to taking that land out of the Greenbelt. It was Durham Region. Now, Durham Region is not on anybody's list in terms of progressive municipality that loves greenfields in the Greenbelt. However, it's important to note, and I'm now going to ask for the next slide, that Durham Region did stand up for its citizens, and not for the reason probably that you think. This is the slide from the Durham Region announcement. This was from a staff report. And this was after they had made a decision about what to tell the province about taking land out of the Greenbelt in Durham Region. In Durham Region, approximately 4,500 acres of land in 3 locations removed from the Greenbelt plan area. On December 14, 2022, Regional Council considered a report which outlined the government's plan to remove lands from the Greenbelt. Attached to the report was a letter from the Chief Administrative Officer to the Minister of Municipal Affairs dated December 1, 2022, expressing a variety of concerns with the proposed Greenbelt removals. For example, servicing, timing, financing, and environmental. At the December 14th meeting, Regional Council further reported that an amendment to staff was a recommendation by adding 2 new clauses which call on the province to return environmental and greenbelt protection to all the areas being removed. In other words, while they were concerned about removing land from the greenbelt because of environmental features, their first thing they mention is servicing, timing, and financing, 3 of the 4 primary. What does that mean? It means that where they had planned for development, planned for sewers, roads, public transit, schools, where they had set aside capital budgets, where they had been worked through fairly with the public, so people made decisions about where they wanted to grow. And even in some cases, lots had been sold to people at expectations that in the future, different phases of development would come their way and they could get their possession of their home. What had happened in Durham is certain developers were leapfrogging over other developers and leapfrogging other home buyers or prospective home buyers. And Durham Region Council didn't think that was fair. And so even though there had been lobbying on some people's part to take that land out of the Greenbelt, when the public rose up and said, no, that's not how we plant, that's not how we allocate our money, that's not how we spend for infrastructure, Durham Region listened and they reversed themselves and they told Doug Ford to get his hands off the Greenbelt And I think that's going to happen here. Maybe the court's going to do it, or maybe there's going to be a political change of heart. But you stay on the right track because this has been done before. People have come to their senses. We can have Biden. Okay. So in terms of the conclusions, and I'll just have a couple of comments to address a few of the questions. For me, the bottom line is simply that the Caledon Bylaws do not conform to the governing 3 official plans. What has happened here is, in my opinion, illegal. The town has put the proverbial cart before the horse. It is disregarding mandatory policies. Oh, I'm on the wrong slide. I apologize. Sorry, Linda. My mistake. Here we go. So, my apologies. Caledon, in response, has issued a press release. And they have said that, there we go, that they are disappointed by, scare tactics, all of you bikers and dangerous people out there, skidding people. But I thought it was worth putting up on the screen, simply because I found some of it somewhat amusing. It says, all lands addressed by total zoning bylaws sit within Caledon's urban boundary. That's true, or adjacent to an existing settlement area. I mean, in other words, it's way out in the fields. Every place in Ontario that isn't in an existing settlement area is somewhere adjacent to a settlement area. This is a cop-out. This is not right. As established by the town's official plan, secondary plans are required for all parcels addressed by the bylaws as part of the town's comprehensive planning approach. We agree. The question is, which comes first? Do your planning, your environmental mapping, and then you do your decision, or vice versa. That's what your case is about. 6 of the 12 bylaws were subsequently appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, were approved following a settlement with the province. Well, as you know, Doug Ford just passed Bill 185, which took away the right of third-party appeals to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If that's the best you got, that it went to the Ontario Land Tribunal and you settled with Doug Ford around urban sprawl, you need to do better. And finally, and I'm quoting, our solicitors have advised us that this lawsuit is completely without merit and the town will be vigorously defending it, continued Groves. Well, I would ask, who are those solicitors? What are their interests? And most importantly, completely without merit. I'm sorry, you're entitled to your opinion, but there's no way this case is completely without merit. That is a gross exaggeration, and I don't think it lies within the mouth of a municipality to tell that to its citizens, to be frank. And on the conclusion, and again, I'm apologizing to repeat myself. Bottom line is simply that Caledon Bylaws do not conform to the governing official plans. These are illegal. The town has put the proverbial cart before the horse, disregarding mandatory policies designed to ensure that municipalities carefully plan development. Democracy Caledon's court application sends a powerful message across Ontario to municipal councils. Respect your official plans and the people that invested time and energy to see them adopted. Woo-hoo.
Thank you, David. Are there questions about the legal strategy? At the back.
Sorry, my voice is going. First, thank you very much for your presentation. Very good.
I'm going to kind of touch you. Hang on a second.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Jim Thomas. I'm from Terracotta. And the question I have is really probably fairly silly, but I'm wondering, is there any way the town council can change the plan prior to the court date and basically undermine what we're trying to do here?
Good questions.
Well, I would hope that they would sit down and settle in the opposite direction, which is to say that they would rescind the bylaws or freeze the bylaws pending the outcome of the studies, right? So your ultimate result in court is to quash the bylaws. Now that gives the developers the opportunity to reapply, but only if they follow the court's direction, which is to do the growth management studies, the secondary planning, and all the whole suite of obligations. It's hard for me to imagine how council could scupper you or your court case at this point, because they would have to rush through studies and get them approved, like secondary plans, growth management studies, and then say to the court, aha, we've done it, so the case is moot. I mean, I'm thinking on my feet here, but I think a court would have great difficulty in endorsing that kind of maneuver, because it'd be like saying, you're going to try and do something with the eggs after they've hatched. Well, once the chickens are running around the yard, it's not fair to say that, we'll look at them as if they haven't been hatched. So it's hard for me to imagine them doing that. I do think that if you keep up with your excellent work, there's a chance. In the mic. Sorry, I would hope that the town would come to its senses and do the right thing, which is sit down with your leadership team and strike a deal that's good for everybody. I mean, if these developments, and I'll be honest, if these developments are as wonderful as they say, then they should simply run them through the process that you're owed, and we'll see if this is the right way to develop. I mean, you are not flying blind here, okay? There are people, planners in the background who are advising your leadership group. They are not making this stuff up. There are very prominent former senior planners who are aghast at what's coming here and have stepped forward and volunteered to say that we want to make this the red line or the line in the sand where we don't go any further with urban sprawl. There is far more land designated in the GTA for future development, including greenfields development, than we need. Let's be honest about what this is. This is simply favoring one group of developers over another group of developers. Anybody who tells you that we're running out of land for greenfield development in Ontario that isn't already pre-approved is lying. So let's be clear about that.
Other question, back there.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Courtney. We live on Centerville Creek Road. I'm wondering how Doug Ford's efforts to protect all of his efforts around Highway 413 are linked to this case, and whether that's being taken into consideration.
You're asking me to know the mind of Doug Ford. Doug and I only agree on one thing, and that's hot dogs. The weakness for them, everything else, I have no idea. There is a very important ingredient to your question or element, and that is this. In the real world, like Europe, for example, or even the United States, when you do highway planning, there is a significant degree of planning that goes into the alignment or the choice of alignment for a highway, okay? Because they cost 10 or 20 billions of dollars, and the costs always run out of control. So highway planners know this, politicians know this. It's no surprise nuclear power plants go way over budget. It's not a surprise to politicians. So they know that if they get it wrong, they're going to live somewhat in infamy. Of course, they're long gone by the time the thing's open. With the case of the 401, it's very interesting, right? Read any study you want. The best that the province can come up with is you start with up at where it is in Vaughan, right at Islington.
Highway 400.
Highway 400, and you wind up all the way in wherever it is, Milton, right? You may save 30 minutes off your commute. Well, their highest level that they've produced that I've seen is that they suggest if you travel the entire route, it will save 30 minutes off your commute. Now, we've all seen other studies, better studies, and it may only save 3 minutes, or may save nothing at all, or you can't, the beauty of traffic, you can't predict it. The way highway planning is supposed to be done is you look at the users of the infrastructure, where are they coming from and where are they going, and you do a tremendous amount of traffic survey route, and then you come up with what is the most efficient way to move people, right? So in our case, you would start with something closer where the people are, which is Toronto. You certainly wouldn't benefit people in Barrie who want to go to Kitchener or Waterloo because there aren't a lot of those people. And you certainly wouldn't put the alignment around the route where all your friends or contributors own land, right? That wouldn't be the way to do it. Now, the thing about traffic, as we all know, is that when you build it, people come and it simply doesn't work. My father, we were born and raised in Dunn-Mills. It was approximate to the Don Valley Parkway and the 401. Okay, and when they first moved in, the Parkway didn't connect to the 401. So my dad's first years lived there. They connected the Don Valley Parkway to the 401, and then they doubled. They put 2 extra lanes on the 401. It went from 4 lanes, 2 lanes each way, to 3 lanes each way. And my father said he remembered the day that it opened, and he drove, and there was no traffic. He said, "Oh my God, I'm in heaven. This means I will never be in under traffic again for the rest of my life." So to your point, how does it relate to these sort of urban sprawl developments? I don't think they do. I think it's convenient. I think it's helpful. But even if you put 35,000 new houses, you are still so far off the mark of justifying this route. I mean, highways are to support people and commerce. When you put a highway that is supposed to be a commuter highway, like Trans-Canada has to go through Saskatchewan. This doesn't have to go through farm fields. It doesn't have to pass by empty land. It should be going where the people are. And if you want to get serious about transportation management, you'd probably do two things. One, you would buy outright or do something with the 407. And two, you would probably ban all non-essential traffic during rush hour. But the relationship to these properties, the 413, I have no idea.
Back there.
Just a quick question. Knowing the state of the court system now, what's the timeline we're looking at?
That's a good question. So the courts are somewhat still backed up over from COVID. This, however, was filed in Brampton, I think. I don't think it was filed in downtown Toronto. So the Toronto courts, I think, are the most backed up. Brampton's awful. The civil court there is backed up? Yeah. Okay. So, so the fact that everything is due soon. There'll be some case management will come up in probably 3 months, and then they'll probably work out a schedule around discoveries and so on and so forth. Optimistically, we might be in court in a year. I would be optimistic. But that's something we can probably find out, and if you give your email address, we'll get back to you. I haven't spoken to Roberto since we filed.
David, will you speak to the lack of First Nations consultation? It's something that's really important to the people of Caledon. Does that get included in the fact that they didn't do all the plans? Like, that would be part of the normal planning process that they should have consulted, right?
So I'm glad you asked that question. I will keep this as brief as I possibly can. My firm and I represented the Huron-Wendat Nation for 12 years. Did a lot of work in Ontario with the Huron-Wendat. So this area is governed by the Treaty with One Spoon. So that according to the town, on these bylaws, there was consultation around the stage 2 and 3 archaeological reports with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Huron-Wendat Nation, because the patrimony or the bones are most closely culturally related, most likely to those two groups, bones or artifacts. However, that consultation is done essentially under the Ontario Heritage Act. The consultation was not done under the Ontario Planning Act, and that's a significant difference that we encounter in aggregate resources, for example, where they'll consult you over the license, the hours of operation, the entrance, but they will not consult First Nations over the principle of the change in land use from something that biology can thrive on to a wasteland or a desert. So we have a real challenge in Ontario, which is we're doing a good job in terms of, or somewhat good job in terms of including First Nations in many things like reconciliation, for example, and other things. They're a very large settlement with First Nations, which is good. On the land use planning side, we are in the racist, dark colonial ages, and I'll give you an example. When there is a development application that goes out for an official plan amendment, a plan of subdivision, or a zoning bylaw, the law in Ontario is that affected parties must get notice, and there are, I think it's 18 different entities, right? So the lower and upper tier municipalities, the school boards, utilities like Rogers Gas, Rogers Cable, Enbridge, conservation authorities. There's a list of 17 different entities that must be notified. That starts the consultation process, right? When you get to 18 in First Nations, it said that notice must be sent to First Nations if the development site or application affects land within 1 kilometer of a reserve. So because there isn't a reserve for around 100 kilometers in any one direction from here, in Caledon, First Nations legally are not obliged to be notified, even if they have an interest. Now, sometimes they are consulted on the archaeology, and the archaeological guidelines and standards requires consultation, but that's only on artifacts, right? That's pottery shards, that's bones, which are very important, but it doesn't deal with the underlying or the critical principle of how do First Nations want to see their landscape treated? How many pits and quarries do you want in Caledon? I mean, I do quarry work here. In Caledon, you have quarries decimating the landscape, the equivalent of 5 central parks in New York City. And I don't think First Nations would have wanted that. So
with respect to the land use planning, there are a lot of serious questions to be asked because I'm not speaking for First Nations, but I would have a hard time believe that they thought that this was done appropriately, but that's a question that needs to be answered.
Rob, and then we're going to talk about how we move, Rob and here, and then we're going to talk about how we move forward. Is that okay? All right, Rob.
Just quickly, David, you touched on a hypothetical. If, say, this takes a year or more, and the town works aggressively to get all those studies done and meets all those tests, and then says, hey, here they are, we've done it. How does the court look at, okay, here they are, but at the time that you rezone the lands, you were out of conformity, technically. How would a court, in your opinion, look at that? They do have the studies, but at the time that those rezonings were done, they were out of conformity.
Well, the beauty of that answer, my daughter is here too, drove me. Thank you very much, Rachel. The beauty of your question is there are only two types of people on earth that care about the principle of the thing more than the practical. The first group is parents and the second is judges. So what you're suggesting is they would do the studies and then hand them in, jam them in and say, well, look, we wound up complying and there's no point in doing this. I would have a hard time believing that a judge based on, and it's up to us to make sure they understand there's a precedent-setting case and it's very significant. But I think that a court will have no trouble establishing that you just can't do it in an ad hoc way that way. Like first we'll approve the thing, then we'll rush to do the studies, then someone takes us to court, and then we'll say, oh, everything turned out in the end. I don't see a court taking that seriously. Okay.
Last question.
My question is, when it comes to Indigenous consultation, it's a great word, but what in the world does that mean? What does that look like?
Okay, Mike's gonna be mad at me because when this is over, so your answers for so long tonight, you're just trying to get back at people. You're trying to sedate the people so they're feeling what you felt earlier this morning. So I'll try and keep it brief. Consultation can be almost anything. It's up to First Nations themselves to establish consultation protocols where they list. So first is notice, and then there's typically a meeting, and then there's in good what I consider to be state-of-the-art consultation programs. There is then a resource allocation. So they say, well, you want us to review your archaeological work, you want us to do site visits, you want us to have archaeological monitors. This costs this amount of money, so pay up if you want to do the consultation. Then there has to be iterations, there has to be accommodation. It ultimately has to go to council. Council has to consult the nation, and then, for big matters, small matters, like little classier things, maybe not, but for big decisions, you have to work through a process very similar, and this is kind of interesting, very similar to what's in your official plan. Right? So what's interesting is we, as citizens, would hope and expect that First Nations would be treated fairly in a consultation with the town of Caledon, right? Well, this court case is about doing exactly the same thing, just with you and First Nations. So I would say this court case, in a way, stands for consultation writ large, because if you can do it to the citizens of Caledon, that pretty much sets the mark in terms of how badly you can disregard anybody in Ontario.
Thank you, David Donnelly. Dave has a few words to say before we get to the call to action.
Yeah. I'm going to keep it. Oh, can I put this up here? Okay, thanks very much. So I thought that I was going to have to kind of put a human face onto David's, what I thought was going to be a very clinical expose of this, but he's done an amazing job, so I'm going to keep this very tight. I just want to say that, quite frankly, we wish we weren't in this position. We do not relish being here, where we are in litigation with our town council. This is not a happy place for us. We did a lot of soul searching, and the bottom line, from our perspective, is that somebody had to stop this headlong rush to doing what has been done. That these 5,000 acres in the south part of Caledon deserve to be treated more fairly, and that This was not the way to plan our town. So why are we taking this action? The mayor ignored requests by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Paul Calandra, and Rob went through those points. She ignored a second letter from Municipal Services Department saying basically it's premature, stop this, unbundle them, and deal with these holding provisions. And the mayor ignored that. The mayor ignored the region appeal for the reasons that Rob talked about, that they were premature for a number of reasons. The most important is this growth management phasing plan. And basically, what they were saying was the cost of bringing in all of these water, sewer pipes, water lines, not to mention roads, all of that other growth-related stuff, is going to cost us billions. And you know what? We need to have a plan in place. That's what they were saying. She ignored that. The Region Conservation Authority, as Rob mentioned, talked about the fact that studies had not been done properly, hadn't been done at all, and that the zoning was going to blanket the zoning of, we have a great map that shows all of the stream systems. Like, this is good farmland, and it's a productive area. She ignored them all. And the mayor and her fellow sprawlinators, they ignored repeated calls from hundreds of us, hundreds of Caledon residents, at a number of meetings to explain why the rush here, and get back to this time-honored sequence of planning. So she ignored us all. So that's why we feel compelled to take this action. There is just too much at stake for us to do nothing. There's the financial future, the financial risk, there's public accountability. Oh, there should be a slide. Oh, it's not, sorry. It's okay. Public accountability, rebuilding public trust in our institutions. It's at an all-time low right now. There's Caledon's farmland. It's headwaters, it's greenbelt, it's wildlife, it's the things that Caledon are. And there's Caledon's character and the rights of all of us to plan our own community, not the developers who don't live here, who do not call this our home. That's why we are doing what we're doing. So, thank you.
Okay, are you sitting there wondering what you can do? Hands up if you're wondering what you can do. That's not very many hands. Let's wake you back up, okay? All right, so as Deb was just saying, Rob took us all through the background of how we got here and spelled out all the risks that you face. Erica told you that whatever we do is not just us. There are hundreds, thousands of people who feel the very same way you do. And David's described the legal action. And as you asked, it's going to take time for that to play out. Could take a year. Are we going to win only in court? There are two courts. There's the Ontario Superior Court, and there's the Court of Public Opinion. And you have to win in both courts, folks. We have to win in both courts. We can't just say to the lawyers here, go off and do the case, wait for a year for the result. We actually need to win in the Court of Public Opinion as well, and to be visible in showing your opposition to this, and showing your opposition such that the councillors start to rethink this. I mean, nobody said this, and I'm just going to say it. The council is going to use taxpayer money, your money, to fight you in court on something to defend something that's illegal. They should just give up, really. And I think we should say to them, you know what, you were going to do this to us? You should stop right now and start over. Because when the court case is successful, what happens? They have to start over and do the planning process that they should have started right away. So, in many, many ways, we all together need to make that case. And so I'm going to review the calls to action. Are you ready? On the way in, did you pick up one of these? All right, this is your own personal organizer's kit. You're all automatically tonight, officially by virtue of being here, deputized as being a Caledon, Democracy Caledon organizer, and you're wearing your deputy button right now, I think. So hand up if you have your deputy button on. Are you a deputy? Are you an organizer for Democracy Caledon? Are you? Are you? I can't hear you. All right, that's the right answer. So the calls to action are described here in detail. I'm just going to touch on them briefly. Is that all right? So the first thing is, on the website tomorrow will be, are you familiar with those kind of click and send emails? You click here, you sign your name, you can add to the email if you want, and it goes to council and the councilors. That'll be on the website tomorrow. By the way, Erica McNeese has done a fabulous job on the website. I don't think you were a website designer before this, right? You just learned how to do this right now, and she's doing a great job. So that'll be on the website tomorrow, so you can send that. Item number 2 is for you to send personal messages in whatever ways you can to the mayor, councilors, and your MPP, Sylvia Jones. And we'll come back to Sylvia Jones in the province because they have a role. Are people squawking over there? I say MPP Sylvia Jones and I hear squawk. Okay, that's interesting. So you can send personal messages. You can send an email to them. You can phone them. You can ask them for a meeting. You can bump into them in the grocery store or at church or at the fair and tell them personally how you feel about this. Who's interested in doing that? Hands up. All right. Number 3, 2 and 3 are both contact. Number 4, wear your Quash the Bylaw button. This is not just fashionable tonight. It's fashionable throughout the season as you wander about. I don't know if we had David explain this adequately, but the word quash is a legal term. That's actually what the judge is going to be asked to do, is to quash the bylaw. We couldn't make that up. It would have been fun to make that up. It would have been fun to say, oh, what's a good word? Like, you're going to be quashers. They're going to, as time goes on, this is going to be called the Great Caledon Quashing. That's how it's going to be remembered. So, quash on. Is there clapping? If there's clapping, that's well clapping all the time. Okay, talking with your friends and families and your coworkers is really important. And we've got a guideline in here to ask people questions you can ask them. I don't know if there's any significant holidays coming up in the next couple of weeks in your life. Some people celebrate things in the next couple of weeks. You'll be meeting people, you'll be meeting family. Maybe there's things you don't want to talk about with your family and you need a new topic, and here he is. A conversation. It's all designed to questions that you can ask them. Now, as part of that, we have this fabulous, I've lost my pieces of paper here, handbill. Who's got a handbill? Nope. Oh, here it is right here. I'm almost as organized, I think. This we have at the back, 5,000 of these. Now, if we had a postal service right now, we'd mail them to people, but we don't. So you are also delegated to be temporary postal workers and take these to your friends and your family and the people who live on your street or near you. So there's 5,000 at the back. You can take 20, you can take 50, you can take 100, you can take 200, whatever you need. Where are they, Sharon? They're piled up at the back there somewhere. Pat's got them. You can't get out the door without going past Kat, and so she'll give you a bundle to take to distribute. Who will do that? Who will take a bundle, distribute, hand out? Terrific. Okay. Now, do you belong to an organization? Do you belong to a church, a faith group? Do you belong to a curling club? Do you belong to the Caledon Ski Club? Do you belong to an equestrian society? Do you belong to Rotary? Do you belong to a book club? Do you belong to, whatever you belong to? Ask them to pass a resolution. We've written a resolution in here. It's got all that kind of fancy resolution language. Whereas this, whereas that, be resolved. If they need fancy talk, we got it there. If you need less fancy talk, you can take from that. Ask them to pass a resolution and send it to the mayor and council saying, stop this. Who could do that? Who belongs to an organization where you could imagine you could ask them to do that? By the way, if you belong to a book club or a bridge club and they say we've never passed a resolution in our life, now's the time to start. Make it your New Year's resolution to pass a resolution. All right? Okay. Now I'm going to ask you about the last call to action, which is to make a donation. Now, somebody back here very helpfully asked, what's the budget? The budget's $125,000. In rough terms, that's $75,000 for the loss for the case and going to court. It's roughly $25,000 if we do an independent inquiry and hire an expert to produce independent opinions. And whether or not we can do that will depend on the fundraising. The other $25,000 roughly is for all the kind of communication stuff that's going to need to be done. The design, the printing, maybe ads on the radio, maybe in the newspapers, all depends what we can raise. So that's roughly a $125,000 budget. I don't know if you had to swallow hard when you heard that. The leadership did. They went, okay, that's what it's going to take. Now, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to make a pledge. There is a pledge card. Pledge card looks like this. I think we were very clever. You fill in one side and you take it home to remind you. You fill in another side and you leave it with us so that we can follow up with you. And you can, if you're more skilled than I am, you can tear it in half, or we actually have officially scissors at the back you can use to cut that, okay? So you're looking at your pledge card. You have it in front of you. And I'm going to ask you, let me back up and say this. The pledge means that you're going to fulfill that during the life of the campaign. It doesn't mean necessarily you're going to make the donation today or tonight or tomorrow. You're going to make that, fulfill your donation, fulfill your pledge as you can. It's really important for the leadership group to have confidence going forward to know what budget they're working with. If they can say, okay, the community's pledged $75,000, then they know they've got $75,000 they can work with. So this is what we're doing tonight, is asking for pledges so you can give a message to your leadership about how much confidence you have in them, how much confidence you have in the case, how important it is to you to protect Caledon. I'm going to lead you through a little pledge exercise. And I'm going to do a little math with you first. So I think there's about 100 people here. And if on average, each of you pledged $100, that would be $10,000. Am I got my decimals right? I'm a little iffy on my decimals sometimes. Okay, if on average you pledge 200 each, that's $20,000. You're with me? Now, people have different abilities to give. Every donation matters. I'm going to start asking. I'm going to ask the number. I'm going to say, who pledged this amount? I'm going to start at a high number. Some of you may be able to make that pledge, and that's terrific. And I'm going to go down until we've given everybody the opportunity to pledge. Pledging out loud, you might be going, why are you asking me for money in public? This makes me nervous. It's actually a form of solidarity. It's a way to say to each other, I'm in. Are you in? I'm in. Are you in? Having said all that, some people are modest. Yes?
Tax receipt.
I'm going to get there.
Matters.
I'm going to get there. Having said all that, there are some of you who will say, look, I just want to be anonymous about that, that's fine, to fill out your pledge card. But I'm going to give us an opportunity to show support and solidarity to each other and encourage each other. The Small Change Fund, that poster at the back, means that your donation to Caledon for All, which is the operating partnership for Democracy Caledon, is eligible for a tax receipt. And if you make a pledge and you make some of your donation now, in December, you'll earn a tax receipt for this year, and if you make some of your pledge next year, you'll earn another tax receipt. You can make a donation by writing a check to the Small Change Fund. It says on here who to address that to, and Rosita and Sharon, see that table at the back will help you with that. You can write a check, or we have one of those fancy little square devices, and you can use your card and make the donation right now. You can make a donation by e-transfer. If you want to go home and you have questions about how to make a donation, you can contact us and we'll help you out. Are you ready? Because I'm going to start right here. Is there anybody that will pledge $5,000? There might be somebody in the room, and I know 5,000 is a kind of a big number, and you might have to turn to somebody next to you or, call a friend or something like that. And so I talk a little bit here for a minute or two to give you a chance to think about that. And to look around the room and say, is there anybody who, and $5,000 as a pledge can be paid in installments? Is there anybody who would like to do that, who'd like to make a pledge? We've raised $15,000 already, by the way. That's been donated but we can have a little clap, a little celebration of the $15,000 Any donations so far? Is there anybody who would like to make a pledge of $5,000? How about a pledge of $2,500? Thank you. What's your name?
Sheila.
Sheila pledges $2,500. Let's celebrate Sheila. And I need a little mathematical help at the back to keep a running total for me so I can ask in case I get lost. $2,500. Anybody want to join Sheila and make a pledge of $2,500? I don't want to rush you. Anybody else? $1,500. Anybody like to pledge of $1,500? You're all waiting for me to get to 1,000, right? Because 1,000 times 100 is 100,000? Okay, I'm ready. Who wants to pledge $1,000? Right there. What's your name? Tamara. What, Kate? Tamara, and this person over here? Emily, and Suzanne. And Suzanne and Linda. That's $4,000 pledges. Let's celebrate them. If there was one more $1,000 pledge, we'd have that $5,000. Is there anybody else in the room who wants to join the $1,000 for? Erica does. That puts us at $5,000. Thank you. That's $7,500. Who would like to pledge $750? It's kind of a funny number. Doesn't know if it works well with our math. Maybe 500 works better. Who'll pledge $500? Okay, lots of people. Would all the $500 people stand up? 500 pledgers, please stand up. Because we're going to ask your name one at a time. What's your name? Liz? Liz? Dr. Dow. And your name? Raz.
Donna Roberts.
Donna Roberts. And Sandy.
Gail.
Gail.
Allie.
Allie.
Brad.
Fran.
Carol.
Carol. Rob. One more time. Dimitri. That's 10 people. That's $1,000. No. Help me with my decimals. $5,000. Okay, please stand up. Over $250 pledgers, please stand up. Let's celebrate them. And your name is? Sam. Sandra. Bob? Judy. Mars. Deb. Sheila. Sarah. Carol. Laura, are you standing? Okay, thank you. Is that 250?
Yes.
There was 9 times 250. Is there one more person who pledged 250 to help us just round our math out? And we'll have 10 who pledged 250 because that'll be 2,500 and it'll help me. Right back there. Thank you. What's your name? Kay. Thank you, Kay. That's $2,500. That's 10 people who've joined that club. Who wants to be in the $100 club? Pledge $100. Please stand up. Please stand up if you're pledging $100. Your name? Peter. Dave. Mariah. Doug. Joe. Ivan. Barb. Andrews. Ian. Did I miss anybody? Again, that was 9 people, $100. I really like round numbers. I can keep track of this. There's one more person who'll pledge $100. Lucas, do you want? Oh, sorry. You're pointing at somebody right there. Thank you. What's your name? Alan. We knew that. We just like to hear you say your name. Thank you, Alan. Sharon's keeping track back there. I hope it's you could tell me in a minute what the number is. How about, what number are we at, Sharon? No, cumulatively. Do some math and we'll come back to you. $50. Who pledged $50? Who pledged $50?
Tax receipts.
Tax receipts for everything. Is there any other amount anybody wants to pledge? Because there may be somebody sitting there now going, yes, I would like to pledge $5,000. I just wanted to see if anybody else was going to pledge anything. Is there any other? Yes.
Can I address this a little bit, just a bit?
Sure.
How about you guys putting out to the community at large that we have a budget of $125,000 if you really believe in what we're doing and then just a few lines about what you're doing, not long, just 2 little lines, and say, we need your support, and it's $125,000. And what you're gonna get with that is you're gonna get 2 or 3 people that come to you with $50,000 apiece, and you'd be happy.
Well, I'm going to say it back to you a little differently. That you're going to do exactly what you said in terms of asking the community, because we're going to go to the community and say that tonight we raised $15,900. Say that number again, we can't hear you. $50,900. 15? I have a little deaf. 15,900. Well, somebody's got to pledge $100. Round this out. All right, what's your name? Barb. That brings us to 16,000. And we have 15,000 from people in the community who donated already, so 16, 15. We're at $31,000, is that right? Yes. We're going to do exactly what you said. We're going to go out to the community and ask for donations to manage this. Now, some of you are quietly, modestly sitting there, filling in your pledge card. You haven't told us. That's okay. We know that. We appreciate it. So the number's going to go up. And just like you said, there are some people we can go to in the community and say, well, the community at that meeting came up with this much money in pledges. Will you help match those pledges? It's good advice. We're going to do those things. Now, can we have one more round of applause for all of us for what we just did? We're almost done, right, Ted? Almost done. And we promised we'd be done by 9 o'clock, so we got 3 minutes, so we're just kind of faking it here now for 3 minutes to fill the time, because once you get your money's worth, but I think you're making a closing comment, aren't you?
No, Erica.
Erica is, all right, all right.
Really about minutes, just a bit.
Come up here.
Just a making. So as I look around the room, first off, thank you. But as I look around the room, again, I see a lot of very familiar faces. My family has been in Caledon for almost 50 years. We've seen a lot of change. And as you drive home through the snow, in one of these beautiful Caledon snowy evenings that we've all come to love, in case you end up being pulled out of a ditch somewhere, you are going to go home to a place that you love, and you're here because you love this place. And there are a lot of us out there that drive home and you hit that threshold and you go, I remember why I love this place. There has been a lot of talk that Democracy Caledon is a bunch of people who just hate development. And we are not that. We are not against development. We are not a group of NIMBYs who don't want somebody in our backyard. What we do want is to be able to preserve all of those reasons why you love this place. Many of us, don't even live close to some of these areas that have been rezoned. But they have come to be places that represent all of the elements of Caledon that we love. And so, in the coming months, as you think about what you can do, and you reference some of the things that Mike has said, all I want you to do is, even if you cannot donate, have the conversation with people about the fact that change is still available to us. Our voices have not been silenced. Change can come about, and that change will come about because you and your neighbors love where you live. So on behalf of Democracy Caledon, on behalf of all of your neighbors, on behalf of every single person who loves the reason they live in Caledon, even though you're getting slaughtered by your property taxes, you still love living here. So on behalf of all of us from Democracy Caledon, thank you very much, and please drive safely.